see that? I mean, I agree 100%. What does that look like? How does the one affect the other?
Well, if things aren't going on at home, what happens is the business owner, a lot of times you'll kind of subconsciously take it out on business, on your staff.
Yeah.
You'll become more of a driver. You don't want to go home, so you spend more time in the business.
Yep.
You start to isolate. So when things aren't working out at home, what they do is then they start putting all their energy into the business, and the business might start actually doing better because they're putting so much energy in it, but it's creating a deeper and deeper wedge into the relationship until ultimately something can tumble, and then which would really even disrupt the business.
Yeah.
Right. So what happens if you get a divorce? What's going to happen to business? Because all the assets have to get split. So that becomes messy. And so just because this one spouse is working the business and the other one isn't, doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't be both involved with the business at some level, because it's their asset.
Okay.
They're both their assets, whether it's formally in the formal documents in the business or not.
Yeah.
Because you're married, especially here in the United States, right? As you know, once you're married, all the assets are going to be 50-50. Yeah. And so that creates that dynamic. And then on the business side, when things are stressful in the business, there's a financial implication at home. Yeah. So once that hits home, there becomes a whole host of issues and conversations that come up at home. So that's a quick example of how that gets intertwined.
Wow. Incredible.
And then the spouse feels not included because they don't know what's going on. So there's a disconnect there. And then that causes conflict in the relationship. And then on the kids, it's hard. It's just, there's no communication of what's going on, because a lot of times if the spouse knows what's going on, they're able to either pray, give some wisdom, empathy, support, whatever they might be needing. But if they don't know what you're needing and it's just conflict all the time, you get into a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very common, I imagine, amongst a lot of business owners and their spouses.
Unfortunately, it's very
one
common.
Handles the business and one handles home. Or
they have their own career. They might have their own career, or some have their own business.
Yep.
So there's a lot of reasons why there's that isolation. And then even when they're both working in the business together, a lot of times even that spouse that's supporting the owner in the business still doesn't know exactly what's going on. They're just doing a specific job.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes back to they don't know how to communicate well and know how to resolve conflict well. Yeah. So that's why a lot of times they either withhold information or they don't want to know, because they don't want to get into this conflict that they know they can't fix because they don't know how to do it well.
Because a lot of times they're having they can't get things resolved, so they're having that same conflict, that same video or tape playing in their minds, like, oh, we can't talk about this. So they have all these hot topics that they can't talk about because they're not able to get things resolved.